Our new Hall of Famer is a man who will close out his 15-year UFC career in about 8 hours in a rubber match with Forrest Griffin at UFC 148. This man has spent over 4 hours and 45 minutes competing inside the octagon and has done so at the highest level. He has thrown down with some of the best fighters in the world, spanning several UFC eras. A brash, polarizing presence with bleached blonde hair and devastating takedowns, this light heavyweight made his UFC debut on May 30th, 1997. It was UFC 13, and within 3 short years, he would seize the UFC light heavyweight title by beating the legendary Wanderlei Silva. Under the moniker the Huntington Beach Bad Boy, he would go on to reign for a record 3.5 years and took part in some of the biggest fight in our promotion's history. His record of 5 consecutive UFC light heavyweight title defenses still stands to this day. Whether you loved him or loved to boo him, it goes without saying we are all going to miss him. He is truly one of a kind, a dynamic fighter and personality who dedicated a huge chunk of his life to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And now to make the induction official, please join me in welcoming UFC President Dana White.
Good morning, everybody. We are here to celebrate the career of Tito Ortiz. Oh, the times we have had, Tito and I. If you look back from when we started this company back in 2001, I managed Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz before we ever even bought the UFC. And I got to tell you, to be honest, you know I always am, some of the best and some of the worst times I've ever had. But the story between me, Tito, Chuck, and all the things that went on in the early days of the UFC are really what helped build this thing and helped to get it where it is today. Some of the biggest fights, you know, I remember as this thing was first getting started, and, you know, the Tito Ken, Tito Chuck, Tito Randy, all the big fights had one thing in common: Tito was involved. He is definitely a guy who knew how to get under your skin and knew how to build big fights. And he is a guy who was always very passionate about the sport, about what he did, and he's contributed a lot of great things to the sport. And even to this day, you know, Tito is, this is gonna be his last fight tonight, and he still has tons of fans and people who admire, love, and adore him. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to induct the new member to the UFC Hall of Fame, Tito Ortiz. Set it on side.
Wow. 15 years. May 30th, 1997, I stepped in the octagon. And you guys want to understand what fear is? I had fear. But I trained hard for the fight, so I knew I was ready. The match lasted 22 seconds. At that night, a star was born. Hard work and dedication was in my mind thanks to wrestling. You guys see guys walking around with Punishment Wrestling Club shirts and it says, "Wrestling saves lives." Wrestling saved my life. It got me into a sport that was a one-on-one combat where the only person that would be better at himself was himself, and that's what I did. I was able to learn through that, through high school wrestling at Huntington Beach High, going to Golden West Junior College, then going to Cal State Bakersfield. I learned something that no athlete that I ever knew of would do, and that was press themselves to limits in training each and every time. Then this thing that came on television called Ultimate Fighting Championship came about, and I was like, wow, these guys are crazy ass, man. It looks kind of fun, but I don't know if I could be able to do this stuff. There was a guy by the name of Tank Abbott, and I had to give thanks to Tank Abbott, who fought UFC 6. Another really good friend by the name of Paul Herrera, who is wrestling coach, who was my wrestling coach in high school. He gave me a call and said, Tito, you want to come in and want to work with this guy? I was like, he ain't going to punch me in the face, right? Because at the time, he was knocking guys out unconscious at heavyweight. I came in and I worked with him. I saw UFC 12, Jerry Bolander, who fought in it. And I wrestled him in high school, and I was like, wow, this guy's submitting these guys. Maybe I can give this a try. Called up Tank, and I said, Tank, I want to fight. He goes, you sure you want to fight? No, yeah, I want to fight. I think I'll do well at this. Thank God with the wrestling pedigree I had, it was hard work and dedication. I worked with Tank, I worked with Dave Thomas, I worked with Paul Herrera, Eddie Ruiz, and I got my first chance to fight in UFC 13. Like I said, I was afraid. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I looked across the cage and going, all right, just keep your hands up and attack. From that point out on, I did it over and over again. I loved it. It showed hard work. I learned my jiu-jitsu from Kleber Luciano. First time I ever did jiu-jitsu, he tapped me in a minute. He tapped me in 2 minutes. He tapped me in 3 minutes. Tapped me in 5, then about 15, then about 20. And I was like, wow, I'm learning this stuff. I went on from that point and went back to school because me and Tank got out falling out. Finished a year there, and me and the coach at Cal State Bakersfield didn't see eye to eye, so I said, you know what, I'm going to give this UFC thing a try out again. I came back, and they gave me a call. I went down to Brazil to go watch Vanderlei Silva versus Vitor Belfort, the first fight with John Lober against Frank Shamrock, and I remember walking up to John Peretti and telling him, I'll kick any of these light heavyweights' asses, guarantee you. And he laughed at me, he goes, who are you? I'm Tito Ortiz. Had my first fighter cards. I handed him one, I had my phone number on it, and I told him, watch me, UFC 13. Guy Metzger barely got away from me. Got a call 2 months later to fight in UFC 19 against Jerry Bolander, a guy who had got my attention to the sport, and I stopped him in 14 minutes and 52 seconds. I was a young kid who I fought for my life. From that point out on, it just went on and on. This sport of mixed martial arts has grown to the capacity I never expected to be. When Dana White came to my apartment and asked to be my manager, he was a boxing promoter at the time, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this guy a chance. And he changed my whole outlook on the sport, he changed my whole outlook on business, on management, everything. He helped me get where I am today, and I was very, very thankful for it. Lorenzo Fertitta, that bought the company back in 2001, I was thankful that he stepped up and bought the company. Him and Frank Fertitta. If it wasn't for those two guys, this sport wouldn't be here where it is. All you fans wouldn't be here where you guys are if it wasn't for them. Over the years I put in this sport, I've gave my heart, I've gave my soul, I gave my body. I've had ACL reconstructive surgery before I fought Marashenko. Before I fought Ken Shamrock the first time. I fought 6 months right after surgery. I had back surgery. I fought a year after that. I had neck surgery. I fought 6 months after that. I had meniscus tear, took out 50% of my meniscus in my right knee. I've had some major surgeries. So people kept saying, Tito, why are you retiring? I'm retiring because it's time. It's time for me to walk away because I've done everything I possibly can do in this sport that I wanted to do. And that my number one goal was to be the greatest UFC fighter that ever graced the octagon. And I think I could hold hands with many fighters that have done that same job in the sport. I got to give some thanks, though, right off the bat. I mean, to people that have helped me. Of course, my mom and dad for making me. You know, my mom for separating away from my father, giving me a second chance in this life. I'm very thankful for it. My brothers, Marty, Jim, and Mike, for kicking my ass every day and making me tough and being good supporters through my career. Of course, I go back to high school where it began. Eric Escobedo, who was my wrestling partner, who helped me. I mean, every day after practice, we would drill and we'd get better and better. Rob Rice, my high school wrestling coach. Tom Wynham, my resource teacher, who had my back no matter what. He'd call me every morning and kind of say, you know, Tito, time to go to school. Paul Herrera, I've mentioned before, he was a big mentor in my life. He was there when I was cutting weight. I remember in my junior year cutting down to 160s, and I thought I was going to die, and he said, Tito, it's going to be okay. Raul Duarte from Golden West College, who stood by my side to give me my financial aid to get in school. I mean, I went through school by myself on my own, and he was one of the guys who helped me. Dave Thomas, of course, who's been there from the very beginning, who held pads for the first time for me. Of course, Tank Abbott, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. Club Luciano for my jiu-jitsu instructor, the first guy to show me what jiu-jitsu was. John Lober, who helped me out with submissions too as my career started building. John Spencer with my Muay Thai. Of course, Rob McCullough and Tiki Goshen, two of my friends that were there for me through when I was winning the titles from back to back to back. Of course, Frank Shamrock. He's the guy who taught me what hard work and the cardiovascular era was using a heart rate monitor. I really looked up to him. Colin Uyama, one of my trainers, he taught me a lot through my Muay Thai. Of course, John Lewis, and at the time, a man, Joe Silva, who's a matchmaker now. He had my back then, he still got my back now, and it's just awesome to see. A friend who's helped me out a little bit with my contract stuff, Wayne Harriman, Rico Rodriguez, of course, Rampage, and of course, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, and Ken Shamrock. You guys, we helped build this sport where it is today. Of course, Saul Solis, one of my main trainers, my strength and conditioning coach, Paul Lacanina. Of course, Dr. Kavitny over at Curlin and Joe for getting my ACL surgery, and I was able to bounce back after only 6 months after surgery. Dr. William Smith here in Las Vegas. He repaired an animal and a monster. I had back surgery and neck surgery with him. Valerie, his assistant, who's been with me, since surgery and always helped me when I've had problems, with the injury itself. Of course, Jason Perillo, who's revamped my mind. Ophir, Zufa, Dana White, Lorenzo Fertitta, Frank Fertitta. If it wasn't for you guys, us fans, me as a fighter, me as a man, me as a businessman, and a father, I would be here right now. Because my main goal in life was to make sure that I give my kids everything I never had. And of course, cannot forget a woman who's been by my side, Jenna Jameson, has my 2 beautiful sons, Jesse and Journey. And I want to give thanks to my ex-wife, Kristen, for taking care of my son, Jacob, who had meningitis 3 weeks ago. And I was able to suck it up, get back in camp. I told myself I wouldn't cry, but I'm an emotional cat. Every one of you fans, you guys are no longer fans. You guys are family. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't get here and kick ass every single time. I hope you guys are ready for the fight tonight. I'm ready for the fight tonight. I'm gonna get my hand raised. And like I said, I've been doing this stuff not for the money. I've been doing this to support my family. I've been doing it for the love of the sport and to make the sport the most fast and growing sport in the world today. Soccer and basketball, we're coming after your ass because we already took over boxing, wrestling, and mixed martial arts, and NFL. So, we're gonna keep growing with fans like you guys, each and every one of you. You guys help build this sport. It just says ain't fighters. You guys are the ones that are paying for the tickets. You guys are the ones that are paying for the pay-per-view. But us fighters are the ones kicking each other's asses to entertain you guys. As they say in the gladiator days, you win the crowd, you win your freedom.